Private Nicholas Miller's finger tenses on the trigger of his pulse rifle as Princess Bryn's emerald eyes lock onto his. The alien royal and the human soldier stand frozen, an unlikely pair thrust together by the chaos of war. Deafening explosions rock the high-security compound on the outskirts of the Denobulan capital. Shards of crystalline architecture rain down as rebel forces pound the loyalist stronghold with relentless artillery fire. Nicholas grits his teeth, his combat training kicking in as he assesses their dire situation. "This way, Your Highness!" he shouts over the din, grabbing the princess's slender blue arm and pulling her toward a service corridor. Her ceremonial robes whip behind her as they sprint through the crumbling structure. A stray energy blast sears the air inches from Nicholas's head. He shoves the princess to the ground, shielding her with his armored body as chunks of ceiling crash down around them. In the momentary quiet that follows, their ragged breathing mingles in the dust-choked air. "Why are you helping me?" Princess Bryn asks, her melodic voice tinged with suspicion. "I'm your enemy." Nicholas meets her gaze, struck by the alien beauty of her features. "Right now, those rebels out there are the enemy. My job is to keep you safe." A distant explosion punctuates his words. Nicholas hauls the princess to her feet, and they resume their frantic escape through the labyrinthine compound. As they round a corner, they come face to face with a squad of heavily armed Denobulan rebels. Time slows as Nicholas's combat training takes over. He pushes the princess behind a pillar and opens fire. His precise shots drop 3 rebels before they can react. The others scatter for cover, giving Nicholas and Bryn the opening they need. They dash down a side passage, alarms blaring and emergency lights casting eerie shadows. Nicholas's mind races, trying to recall the compound's layout from his briefings. He leads them toward what he hopes is an exit, acutely aware of the precious cargo he's protecting. As they burst through a set of reinforced doors, the full scale of the rebel assault becomes clear. The night sky glows orange with fires raging across the city. Dropships swoop low, deploying more rebel forces to overwhelm the loyalist defenses. "We can't stay here," Nicholas says, scanning for a safe route. "Do you know anywhere we can hole up until my people can extract us?" Princess Bryn hesitates, conflict evident on her face. "There's a series of caves in the mountains to the north. They're part of an old mining complex, largely abandoned now." Nicholas nods, already formulating a plan. "That'll have to do. We need to move fast before we're cut off." As they set off into the war-torn night, Nicholas can't shake the feeling that there's more to this conflict than he's been told. The princess seems to carry the weight of secrets, her shoulders tense beneath her ornate robes. Little does Nicholas know that their desperate flight is about to become far more complicated. In her mind, Princess Bryn guards knowledge of a Denobulan superweapon that could shift the balance of power in the entire sector. As they navigate the treacherous terrain beyond the compound, dodging rebel patrols and loyalist crossfire alike, an unlikely bond begins to form between the alien royal and the human soldier. Somewhere above them, Commander Elena Vasquez receives word of the princess's escape. Her eyes narrow as she issues orders to her extraction team. "Find them. The princess is too valuable an asset to lose. Use whatever means necessary." As dawn breaks over the war-ravaged planet, Nicholas and Bryn press on, unaware that their journey is about to challenge everything they thought they knew about their people's conflict and about each other. Nicholas and Princess Bryn pressed on through the night, their unlikely alliance forged in the crucible of conflict. As the first rays of dawn painted the sky, they approached a narrow mountain pass that promised a route to safety. Suddenly, the ground beneath their feet trembled. A deafening roar filled the air as a massive landslide, triggered by distant artillery fire, cascaded down the mountainside. Boulders and debris thundered across their path, obliterating any hope of passage. "No!" Nicholas shouted, pulling the princess back from the edge of the newly formed chasm. "We can't go this way." Bryn's emerald eyes scanned the treacherous terrain. "There," she said, pointing to a dark opening in the rock face. "A cave system. It might lead us around the blockage." With no other options, they scrambled towards the cave entrance. As they ducked inside, the sounds of battle faded, replaced by the eerie echo of their footsteps on stone. Nicholas activated the light on his pulse rifle, illuminating the rough-hewn passageway. We need to find another way out quickly. The extraction team won't wait forever. As they ventured deeper into the cave system, the walls began to change. Smooth, geometrical patterns emerged from the rock, clearly artificial in origin. "These are denobulan ruins," Bryn whispered, her fingers tracing the intricate designs. "But they're far older than any I've seen before." Nicholas frowned. "How is that possible? Humans have only been in contact with denobulans for a few decades." Their exploration led them to a vast chamber, its ceiling lost in darkness above. At the center stood a raised dais, covered in unfamiliar symbols. "It's some kind of control panel," Bryn said, her scientific curiosity overtaking her caution. She pressed a series of glyphs and the air shimmered. A holographic projection burst to life, filling the chamber with swirling galaxies and planetary systems. At its heart, a device of unmistakable power rotated slowly. Nicholas's breath caught in his throat. "Is that—" "The superweapon," Bryn confirmed, her voice barely audible. "But it's not a weapon at all. It's a terraforming device." The hologram shifted, showing barren worlds transformed into lush, habitable planets. Realization dawned on Nicholas's face. "This changes everything. Why are we fighting over this?" Bryn shook her head, her ornate robes rustling in the stillness. "I don't know, but someone clearly wants to keep this secret." In the dim light of the hologram, their eyes met. The tension that had been building between them since their desperate flight from the compound reached a breaking point. Nicholas reached out, his hand cupping Bryn's face. She leaned into his touch, and their lips met in a passionate kiss. For a moment, the war and its complications faded away, but reality intruded with the sound of voices echoing through the caves. "Rebels!" Nicholas hissed, pulling Bryn behind a fallen column. They watched as a denobulan scouting party entered the chamber, their weapons at the ready. "The general wants this entire system searched," one of the scouts said. "The human and the princess can't have gotten far." As the rebels spread out to search, Nicholas and Bryn retreated deeper into the cave system. They navigated through narrow passages, their progress slowed by the need for stealth. "We need to find food and water," Bryn said as they paused to catch their breath. She examined some fungal growth on the cave wall, then plucked a few pieces. "These are safe to eat. They're a delicacy in some denobulan cuisine." Nicholas nodded, impressed. "Your knowledge just might save our lives." As they continued their journey, they came across a group of injured denobulan civilians huddled in a small cavern. The refugees eyed them with a mixture of fear and hope. "We can't just leave them," Bryn said, her voice filled with compassion. Nicholas weighed their options. "Helping them will slow us down and might compromise our position. But—" he looked at the scared faces of the civilians. "We can't abandon them either." They spent precious time treating wounds and sharing their meager supplies. As they prepared to move on, one of the civilians grabbed Bryn's hand. "Thank you, Your Highness. May the stars guide your path." The gesture of gratitude strengthened their persistence as they resumed their journey through the labyrinthine caves. Hours passed as they navigated the twisting passages, always alert for signs of pursuit. Finally, they emerged from the cave system into a hidden valley. Lush vegetation surrounded a crystal-clear stream, the peaceful scene a stark contrast to the war-torn landscape they had left behind. "It's beautiful," Bryn breathed, taking in the untouched wilderness. Nicholas nodded, but his military training kept him focused on their predicament. "We need to find a way to contact the extraction team." As if in answer to his words, the distant whine of engines filled the air. Both Earth Defense Force and denobulan rebel ships appeared on the horizon, converging on their location. Nicholas and Bryn shared a look of drive. The knowledge they carried about the true nature of the superweapon could change the course of the war. But first, they had to survive the coming confrontation. "Whatever happens," Nicholas said, gripping his pulse rifle tightly, "we're in this together." Bryn nodded, her emerald eyes flashing with willpower. Together. As the ships drew nearer, Nicholas and Bryn prepared to face whatever challenges lay ahead, their newfound bond giving them strength in the face of uncertainty. The roar of approaching engines shattered the tranquil atmosphere of the hidden valley. Nicholas and Bryn exchanged a look of grim tenacity as both Earth Defense Force and denobulan rebel ships appeared on the horizon, converging rapidly on their position. "We need to split up," Nicholas said, his voice tight with urgency. "It's our best chance of survival and getting the truth out." Bryn's emerald eyes widened. "No, we can't." "We have to," Nicholas interrupted, gripping her shoulders. "I'll head for the EDF ships. You approach the rebels. We can gather intelligence from both sides and find a way to stop this madness." Bryn hesitated, then nodded. "Be careful, Nicholas." They shared one last, fierce embrace before parting ways. Nicholas sprinted towards the Earth Defense Force ships, his pulse rifle at the ready. As he approached, he recognized the insignia of Sergeant Marcus Chen's extraction team. "Hold your fire!" Nicholas shouted, raising his hands. "Sergeant Chen, we need to talk!" Chen emerged from behind cover, his weapon trained on Nicholas. "Private Miller? What the hell is going on?" Nicholas quickly explained the situation, the true nature of the denobulan superweapon, Commander Vasquez's questionable tactics, and the imminent threat posed by General Zax. Chen's expression grew increasingly troubled as he listened. "This is way above our pay grade, Miller," Chen said, lowering his weapon. "I know, sir," Nicholas replied, "but if we don't act now, both sides could trigger a catastrophe." Chen considered for a moment, then nodded. "All right, I'm in. But this could end our careers if we're wrong." "If we're wrong, our careers will be the least of our problems," Nicholas said grimly. As Chen briefed his team, a blinding flash erupted from the nearby mountains. An invisible wave of energy washed over them, causing their communications equipment to crackle and die. In the distance, ships from both sides began to lose altitude, their engines sputtering. "What the hell was that?" Chen shouted over the sudden cacophony of alarms and failing machinery. Nicholas's blood ran cold. "General Zax must have activated the weapon. We're out of time." Capitalizing on the confusion, Nicholas and Chen led a small team towards the denobulan rebel camp. They moved swiftly through the chaos, dodging malfunctioning vehicles and disoriented soldiers from both sides. As they neared the camp, a denobulan woman in a scorched lab coat stumbled out from behind a rock formation. "Help me, please!" she called out in accented English. Nicholas raised his weapon, but Chen held up a hand. "Wait, who are you?" "Dr. Lyra," the woman gasped. "I was forced to work on the weapon project. General Zax, he's gone mad. He's holding your princess hostage in the facility." Nicholas's heart raced. "Bryn? Where is she?" Dr. Lyra pointed towards a camouflaged entrance in the mountainside. "In there. But the facility is heavily guarded, and the weapon's activation sequence has already begun." Chen turned to Nicholas. "We need a plan, and fast." Nicholas nodded, his mind racing. "Dr. Lyra, can you guide us through the facility?" "Yes," she replied. "I know every corridor and security measure." As they prepared to infiltrate the facility, the ground shook with the impact of distant explosions. Chen's communicator crackled to life, carrying a fragmented transmission from Commander Vasquez, ordering a full assault on the rebel stronghold. "We're out of time," Nicholas said. "We need to move now." The makeshift team advanced into the mountain complex, guided by Dr. Lyra's expertise. They navigated through a maze of corridors, disabling security systems and avoiding patrols. The deeper they went, the more the facility hummed with ominous energy. As they rounded a corner, Nicholas caught a flash of familiar blue skin. "Bryn!" he called out. The denobulan princess turned, her eyes widening in surprise and relief. She had managed to slip her bonds, but was cornered by approaching guards. Nicholas and Chen opened fire, providing cover as Bryn sprinted towards them. "Nicholas," she breathed as they embraced briefly. "The weapon, it's worse than we thought. If it fully activates—" A deafening explosion rocked the facility, cutting her off. Alarms blared as the lights flickered ominously. "This way!" Dr. Lyra shouted, pointing down a side passage. "The main control room is just ahead." They raced through the destabilizing structure, dodging falling debris and exchanging fire with loyal denobulan rebels. The air grew thick with acrid smoke and the scent of ozone. Finally, they burst into the central chamber. The superweapon dominated the space, a massive, pulsating construct of alien technology. A holographic display showed a countdown timer, its numbers ticking relentlessly towards 0. "How do we shut it down?" Nicholas shouted over the cacophony of alarms and energy discharges. Dr. Lyra rushed to a control panel, her fingers flying over the alien interface. The fail-safes have been overridden. We need to manually disrupt the power flow. Bryn joined her at the controls, her royal training allowing her to decipher the complex systems. If we can redirect the energy surge back into the main capacitors, it might overload and shut down. A barrage of weapons fire forced them into cover. General Zax's voice boomed over the facility's speakers. "You're too late. The age of denobulan supremacy begins now." Nicholas and Chen returned fire, holding off the approaching rebel forces. "Whatever you're going to do it fast," Chen yelled. Bryn and Dr. Lyra worked feverishly at the controls, their faces illuminated by the pulsing energy of the weapon. The countdown reached single digits as Nicholas's ammunition ran low. With seconds to spare, Bryn slammed her hand down on a final control. The weapon's hum rose to a deafening pitch, energy arcing wildly across its surface. The holographic display flickered and died as the chamber plunged into darkness. For a moment, all was still. Then, with a thunderous roar, the weapon began to collapse in on itself, releasing waves of energy that shook the very foundations of the mountain. "Run!" Nicholas shouted, grabbing Bryn's hand as they sprinted for the exit. The facility crumbled around them as they raced through collapsing corridors, narrowly avoiding falling debris and erupting power conduits. They emerged into the chaos of the battlefield, where human and denobulan forces alike stared in awe at the mountain as it folded in on itself. As the dust settled, Nicholas pulled Bryn close, their eyes meeting in a moment of shared relief and uncertainty. The immediate danger had passed, but the consequences of their actions were yet to unfold. The fate of two civilizations hung in the balance, and the true test of their newfound alliance was just beginning. The fate of two civilizations hung in the balance, and the true test of their newfound alliance was just starting to unfold. As the dust settled around them, Nicholas and Bryn's moment of relief was short-lived. A high-pitched whine filled the air, followed by the hiss of pneumatic locks engaging. Heavy metal shutters slammed down over the exits, sealing them inside the central chamber. "What's happening?" Sergeant Chen shouted, spinning around to assess their sudden confinement. Dr. Lyra's eyes widened in recognition. "It's the facility's security system. We've triggered a lockdown protocol." A mechanical voice echoed through the chamber. "Decontamination sequence initiated." Misty tendrils of gas began to seep from vents in the ceiling, quickly filling the room with a strange, shimmering haze. Nicholas instinctively pulled Bryn close, covering her mouth and nose with his hand. "Don't breathe it in," he warned. But it was already too late. The gas enveloped them, its effects swift and disorienting. Nicholas's vision blurred, the room seeming to tilt and spin around him. He stumbled, his limbs suddenly heavy and uncoordinated. "The gas!" Dr. Lyra gasped, her voice strained. "It's not lethal, but it's affecting our perception and motor functions." Bryn swayed on her feet, her emerald eyes unfocused. "We have to disable the weapon," she slurred, fighting to maintain her concentration. Through the haze, Dr. Lyra pointed to a complex control panel on the far side of the room. "There, that's the main interface for the weapon systems." Nicholas and Chen exchanged glances, both struggling to focus. Chen nodded grimly. "Go. I'll try to find a way to contact our forces outside." As Nicholas and Bryn staggered towards the control panel, Chen fumbled with a communications terminal hidden in an alcove. His fingers, clumsy from the gas, danced across the unfamiliar interface. At the weapon controls, Dr. Lyra's expertise became evident. Even through her impaired state, she quickly identified the shutdown sequence. "It requires simultaneous input," she explained, her words slightly slurred. "Human and denobulan physiology working together." Nicholas and Bryn positioned themselves on either side of the panel, their bodies pressed close in the confined space. As Dr. Lyra called out instructions, they reached for the controls, their hands brushing against each other. A jolt of electricity seemed to pass between them at the contact. Despite the chaos around them, Nicholas found himself acutely aware of Bryn's proximity, the warmth of her skin, the rise and fall of her chest as she breathed. "Ready?" Bryn asked, her eyes locking with his. Nicholas nodded, swallowing hard. "Together." They began the intricate sequence, their movements synchronized despite the gas's effects. As they worked, the physical contact intensified their connection. Nicholas could feel Bryn's pulse racing, matching his own accelerated heartbeat. Across the room, Chen's persistence paid off. The comm terminal crackled to life, a voice speaking rapid denobulin cutting through the static. "I've reached someone," Chen called out. "A moderate faction within the denobulin government. They're listening." As Chen relayed information about General Zax's true intentions, Nicholas and Bryn continued their delicate dance at the control panel. The weapon's hum began to change, its pitch lowering as the shutdown sequence progressed. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the facility. The weapon's core pulsed with an ominous red light. "No!" Dr. Lyra cried out. "The shutdown triggered a failsafe. The power core is overloading." Nicholas felt a surge of dread. What happens if it overloads? "The entire facility will explode," Dr. Lyra said grimly, "taking half the mountain with it." Bryn's face set with grim. "How do we stop it?" Dr. Lyra's eyes darted around the room, her mind racing, despite the gas's influence. "The excess energy, we need to vent it manually, through the conduit system." She pointed to a hatch set into the wall. "Those tunnels lead to the venting stations, but they're filling with ionizing radiation. It's too dangerous." Nicholas straightened, his vision swimming. "I'll do it. My physiology might handle the radiation better." Bryn gripped his arm. "No, we go together." Their eyes met, a silent understanding passing between them. Without another word, they moved towards the hatch. As Chen continued his frantic communication with the denobulin moderates, Nicholas and Bryn pried open the hatch. A wave of heat rolled over them as they peered into the glowing tunnel beyond. Nicholas took a deep breath, trying to clear his head of the gas's lingering effects. He looked at Bryn, her blue skin glistening with sweat, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and... "Ready?" he asked. Bryn nodded, her hand finding his. Together. With one last glance back at Chen and Dr. Lyra, they plunged into the superheated tunnel, the fate of two worlds resting on their shoulders. Shoulders. The searing heat engulfed them as they pushed deeper into the tunnel, the metal walls groaning under the strain of containing the weapon's unstable energy. Nicholas felt his consciousness slipping, the combination of the gas and the intense radiation taking its toll. His last thought before everything went dark was of Bryn's hand in his, a lifeline in the chaos. When Nicholas finally opened his eyes, he found himself lying on a makeshift cot in what appeared to be a hastily assembled medical bay. The sterile smell of antiseptic filled his nostrils, and the low hum of medical equipment surrounded him. As his vision cleared, he saw Bryn sitting beside him, her blue skin a stark contrast to the white walls of the room. "You're awake," Bryn said, relief evident in her voice. She leaned forward, placing a cool hand on his forehead. "How do you feel?" Nicholas attempted to sit up, wincing at the dull ache that seemed to permeate his entire body. "Like I've been hit by a transport shuttle. What happened?" Bryn helped him into a sitting position, her touch lingering longer than necessary. "We managed to vent the excess energy and shut down the weapon. You lost consciousness just as we reached the main conduit. I had to drag you back." Nicholas nodded, memories slowly trickling back. "And the others?" "Safe," Bryn assured him. "Sergeant Chen and Dr. Lyra are working on stabilizing the facility's systems. The immediate danger has passed, but..." She trailed off, her expression growing serious. "But what?" Nicholas prompted, sensing there was more to the story. Bryn took a deep breath. "The situation outside has... evolved. News of General Zax's plan to use the superweapon against Earth has spread. It's causing a significant shift in the political landscape." She went on to explain how moderate factions on both sides were now calling for an immediate ceasefire and peace talks. However, not everyone was on board with the idea of reconciliation. "Commander Vasquez sees this as an opportunity," Bryn continued, her voice tight with concern. "She's ordered a full-scale assault on our weakened forces." Nicholas cursed under his breath. "We need to stop this before it escalates further." Bryn nodded in agreement. "I've been thinking the same thing. Dr. Lyra believes we can use the facility's communication systems to broadcast a message to all human and denobulin forces in the sector. If we can speak directly to our people, bypass the military command, we might have a chance at preventing more bloodshed, Nicholas finished, already grasping the plan. As they discussed the details of their impromptu peace initiative, the door to the medical bay slid open with a hiss. Sergeant Chen entered, his face etched with concern. "Sir, we have a situation," Chen said, his eyes darting between Nicholas and Bryn. "A denobulan shuttle just docked at the facility. It's—" Before Chen could finish, a tall, imposing denobulan male strode into the room, flanked by two armed guards. His regal bearing and the intricate patterns on his uniform marked him as denobulan royalty. Bryn stiffened beside Nicholas. "Tarek," she breathed, a mix of surprise and apprehension in her voice. The newcomer's eyes narrowed as he took in the scene before him. "Sister," he said, his voice cold and authoritative, "Father sent me to bring you home. I see now why you've been difficult to reach." Nicholas felt Bryn's hand tighten around his arm. He glanced at her, noting the defiance in her posture, despite the clear tension in the room. "I'm not going anywhere, Tarek," Bryn declared, her chin raised. "There's too much at stake here." Tarek's face darkened with anger. "You would choose to stay with these humans?" He spat the word as if it were a curse. "Have you forgotten your duty to our people?" "My duty is to peace," Bryn retorted. "Something you seem to have forgotten." The air in the room crackled with tension as the siblings faced off. Nicholas slowly rose from the cot, positioning himself protectively near Bryn. "Prince Tarek," Nicholas began, trying to defuse the situation. "We're on the verge of a breakthrough here. If you just listen—" "Silence, human!" Tarek snapped, his hand moving to the weapon at his hip. "This does not concern you." Chen stepped forward, his own hand hovering near his sidearm. "I'd reconsider that move if I were you, Your Highness." The standoff was interrupted by the sudden blare of alarms throughout the facility. Dr. Lyra's voice came over the intercom, urgent and breathless. "We have multiple incoming signals. Human assault ships are entering the atmosphere. They'll be in firing range in less than 10 minutes. Nicholas and Bryn exchanged a look of persistence. They knew their window of opportunity was rapidly closing. "Tarek," Bryn pleaded, turning back to her brother, "help us stop this. We can end the war here and now." For a moment, Tarek's purpose seemed to waver, but then his expression hardened once more. "You have until those ships arrive to come to your senses, sister. After that, I'm taking you home, by force if necessary." As Tarek and his guards exited the room, Nicholas turned to Chen. "Get to the communication center. We need that broadcast ready as soon as possible." Chen nodded, already moving towards the door. "What about you, sir?" Nicholas glanced at Bryn, seeing his own purpose mirrored in her eyes. "We'll be right behind you. We have a war to stop." As they hurried through the corridors of the facility, the distant rumble of approaching ships served as a grim reminder of the clock ticking against them. The fate of two worlds hung in the balance, and Nicholas knew that the next few minutes would determine whether they faced a new era of peace or plunged deeper into the abyss of war. War or plunged deeper into the abyss of conflict. Nicholas and Bryn exchanged a determined look before racing down the corridor towards the backup transmitter in a remote section of the facility. As they entered the dimly lit room housing the transmitter, Nicholas immediately began setting up the equipment while Bryn secured the door. The distant rumble of incoming ships grew louder, a constant reminder of the urgency of their task. "Almost there," Nicholas muttered, his fingers flying over the control panel. Suddenly, the door burst open. Lieutenant James Harper strode in, flanked by a squad of human soldiers, their weapons trained on Nicholas and Bryn. "Step away from the transmitter," Harper ordered, his voice cold and authoritative. Nicholas slowly raised his hands, positioning himself between the soldiers and Bryn. "James, what are you doing? We're trying to stop this war." Harper's eyes narrowed. "By betraying your own people?" "I don't think so. Commander Vasquez sends her regards." Bryn tensed beside Nicholas. "You're making a mistake. If you just listen—" "Silence!" Harper snapped, gesturing to two of his men. "Secure the princess. She'll make excellent leverage in future negotiations." As the soldiers advanced, Nicholas sprang into action. He tackled the nearest man, using the element of surprise to disarm him. Bryn, demonstrating unexpected agility, ducked under a soldier's grasp and delivered a swift kick to his midsection. The room erupted into chaos as Nicholas and Bryn fought back-to-back, their movements synchronized despite the frantic situation. Nicholas used his combat training to hold off the soldiers, while Bryn proved surprisingly adept at hand-to-hand combat. "Since when do you know how to fight?" Nicholas gasped as he deflected a punch. Bryn managed a grim smile. "Royal self-defense classes. Never thought I'd actually use them." Their momentary advantage was short-lived. Harper, his face contorted with rage, raised his weapon. "Enough of this!" Before he could fire, the room was filled with a brilliant flash of light. Prince Tarak and his guards stormed in, their energy weapons crackling with power. "Step away from my sister," Tarak commanded, his voice reverberating through the room. The standoff intensified, with human soldiers, Denobulan guards, and Nicholas and Bryn all locked in a tense triangle of raised weapons and heightened emotions. In the confusion, Harper saw an opening. He lunged for Bryn, his hand closing around her arm. Nicholas reacted instantly, throwing himself between them. A shot rang out and Nicholas stumbled, clutching his side. "Nicholas!" Bryn cried out, her eyes wide with fear. In that moment, something in Bryn snapped. With a grace and speed that belied her royal upbringing, she disarmed Harper with a series of precise strikes. The lieutenant fell to the ground, his weapon skittering across the floor. As Bryn rushed to Nicholas's side, the room fell silent. The sounds of battle from outside seemed to fade away, replaced by the soft beeping of the transmitter console. "It's active," Dr. Lyra's voice came through the intercom. "We've remotely activated the transmitter. You're live to both human and Denobulan forces." Nicholas struggled to his feet, supported by Bryn. They shared a look of understanding before turning to face the transmitter's camera. "People of Earth and Denobula," Nicholas began, his voice strained but clear. "What you've been told about this war is a lie." Bryn continued, her hand intertwined with Nicholas's. "The superweapon that threatened both our worlds was never meant to be used. It was a ploy, engineered by those who profit from our conflict." Together, they laid bare the truth about the war, the secret profiteering, and the manipulation that had driven two peaceful species to the brink of destruction. As they spoke, their unity, a human and a Denobulan standing together, spoke volumes. Their words resonated across space, reaching soldiers on both sides of the conflict. Weapons lowered, orders were questioned, and the tide of war began to turn. In orbit, Commander Vasquez watched her carefully laid plans crumble. With a heavy sigh, she gave the order she never thought she'd utter. "All forces, cease fire. I repeat, cease fire." On Denobula Prime, the Emperor sat in shocked silence as he listened to his daughter's impassioned plea for peace. With tears in his eyes, he turned to his advisors. "Contact the humans. It's time we talked." As the broadcast ended, Nicholas sagged against Bryn, the adrenaline fading and the pain of his wound intensifying. She held him close, her eyes filled with a mix of concern and something deeper. Prince Tarak approached, his expression unreadable. "You've certainly caused quite a stir, sister." Bryn met his gaze defiantly. "It was necessary, brother. Will you stand with us?" Tarak was silent for a long moment, conflict evident in his eyes. Finally, he nodded. "For the good of our people. And perhaps for more than that." As joint human-Denobulan peacekeeping forces began to secure the facility, Nicholas and Bryn found themselves at the center of a whirlwind of activity. Medical teams rushed in, separating them to treat Nicholas's wound and perform standard checks. "I'll find you," Bryn promised as they were pulled apart. Nicholas managed a weak smile. "I'm counting on it." As they were led away for debriefing by their respective governments, both Nicholas and Bryn knew that while they had won a significant battle, the war for peace and for their future together was far from finished. The challenges ahead loomed large, but for now they had hope. And sometimes, hope is the most powerful weapon of all. The challenges ahead loomed large, but for now they had hope. And sometimes, hope is the most powerful weapon of all. In the weeks that followed, the facility buzzed with activity as it transformed into a makeshift diplomatic hub. The historic Human Denobulin Peace Summit was set to commence, and Nicholas found himself at the center of the whirlwind. His actions during the crisis had earned him a promotion to sergeant, along with a new assignment that both thrilled and terrified him, head of Princess Bryn's personal security detail. As Nicholas strode through the corridors of the now bustling neutral space station, he marveled at the transformation. Delegations from both species filled the halls, their voices a cacophony of languages and dialects. Security personnel from both sides eyed each other warily, old habits dying hard despite the newfound spirit of cooperation. Nicholas approached the conference room where the first round of negotiations was about to begin. He nodded to the guards flanking the entrance, then slipped inside. The room was a study in tension, with human and denobulin representatives seated on opposite sides of a long table. At the head sat Princess Bryn, her regal bearing a stark contrast to the nervousness evident in the set of her shoulders. As Nicholas took up his position behind Bryn's chair, he caught her eye. She offered him a small smile, one that spoke volumes about their shared experiences and the challenges that lay ahead. He returned it with a slight nod, mindful of the need to maintain a professional facade. The negotiations began in earnest, and it quickly became clear that the road to peace would be far from smooth. Hardliners from both sides voiced their objections loudly and frequently, their words imbued with decades of mistrust and resentment. During a particularly heated exchange, Nicholas leaned in close to Bryn's ear. "Perhaps we could suggest a short recess," he whispered. "Give everyone a chance to cool down." Bryn nodded almost imperceptibly, then raised her voice to address the room. "Esteemed colleagues, I propose we take a brief respite. Let us reconvene in 1 hour with fresh perspectives." As the delegates filed out, many still arguing under their breath, Nicholas and Bryn shared a moment of quiet understanding. They had weathered worse storms together, and they would face these new challenges with the same perseverance. Their moment was interrupted by the arrival of an imposing figure, Admiral Victor Corzan, newly appointed head of the human military delegation. His eyes narrowed as he took in the scene before him. "Princess Bryn," he said, his voice a low rumble, "I trust you're finding these proceedings illuminating." Bryn straightened, meeting his gaze levelly. "Indeed, Admiral, though I believe we have much work ahead of us if we're to achieve lasting peace." Corzan's gaze shifted to Nicholas, his expression hardening. "And you must be Sergeant Benson. I've heard interesting things about you." Nicholas saluted crisply, keeping his face neutral. "Sir, I'm honored to serve in my current capacity." The Admiral's eyes flicked between Nicholas and Bryn, a flicker of suspicion crossing his features. "Yes, I'm sure you are. Carry on, Sergeant." As Corzan strode away, Nicholas felt a chill run down his spine. The Admiral's reputation as a hardliner was well known, and his presence at the summit added a new layer of complexity to an already delicate situation. Later that evening, as Nicholas escorted Bryn back to her quarters, they found themselves alone in a quiet corridor. Bryn's hand brushed against his, a gesture that sent electricity coursing through him. "Nicholas," she said softly, "I don't know if I can do this. The pressure, the expectations, it's overwhelming." He turned to face her, his eyes searching hers. "You can, Bryn. You're stronger than you know, and you're not alone in this." For a moment, the professional facade cracked, and Bryn leaned in close, her forehead resting against his. "Thank you," she whispered. The sound of approaching footsteps forced them apart. As they resumed their formal positions, Nicholas couldn't help but wonder how long they could keep up this charade. The peace summit had only just begun, and already the lines between duty and desire were blurring. As they rounded the corner, they came face to face with Prince Tarek. His eyes narrowed as he took in their slightly flushed faces and the careful distance between them. "Sister," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "Sergeant, I trust the first day of negotiations went well?" Bryn nodded, her composure regained. "As well as can be expected, brother. There's still much work to be done." Tarek's gaze lingered on Nicholas for a moment longer than necessary. "Indeed, we all have our parts to play in this delicate dance." As Tarek continued down the corridor, Nicholas couldn't shake the feeling that the prince's words held a double meaning. The stakes of the peace summit were high, but the personal stakes for him and Bryn were perhaps even higher. With a silent nod, Nicholas resumed his post outside Bryn's quarters. As the door closed between them, he steeled himself for the challenges ahead. The path to peace, into a future with Bryn, would be fraught with obstacles, but as he stood guard in the quiet hallway, Nicholas knew that some things were worth fighting for, whatever it takes. The cost. As dawn broke over the space station, Nicholas found himself standing at attention in the bustling command center, his eyes fixed on the central view screen. The final phase of the Peace Summit was about to begin, and the tension in the air was palpable. Princess Bryn entered, her regal bearing drawing all eyes in the room. Nicholas felt his heart skip a beat, but he maintained his professional demeanor. As she took her place at the head of the delegation, their eyes met briefly, a silent understanding passing between them. The negotiations began in earnest, with both human and denobulan representatives presenting their final positions. Nicholas observed from his post, noting the subtle shifts in body language and tone that betrayed the delegates' true feelings. He caught Admiral Corzin glancing his way several times, the older man's expression unreadable. As the morning wore on, Nicholas found himself unexpectedly summoned to a private meeting with the Admiral. He entered Corzan's temporary office with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. "Sergeant Benson," Corzan said, his voice gruff but not unkind. "I've been watching you closely these past few days. Your actions during the crisis were commendable." Nicholas stood at attention. "Thank you, sir. I was just doing my duty." Corzan's eyes softened almost imperceptibly. "Were you? I wonder." He paused, then continued in a lower voice. "I lost my son in the early days of this war. He was about your age." The admission caught Nicholas off guard. He struggled to find an appropriate response, but Corzan waved him off. "I'm not telling you this for sympathy, Sergeant. I'm telling you because I want you to understand why this matters so much to me. Why peace matters." As their conversation continued, Nicholas found himself opening up to the Admiral, sharing his unique perspective on human-denobulan relations. Corzan listened intently, his hardline stance seeming to soften with each passing moment. Meanwhile, Princess Bryn faced her own challenges. The arrival of her aunt, Duchess Alara, brought a new wave of pressure from the denobulan conservative faction. Nicholas watched from afar as Bryn was cornered by her aunt in a quiet alcove. "My dear," Alara's voice carried just far enough for Nicholas to overhear, "you must understand the delicate position you're in. The nobility is growing restless. They demand a show of commitment to our traditions." Bryn's back stiffened. "And what would you have me do, Aunt?" Alara's reply was swift and merciless. "Agree to a political marriage with Lord Vexar. It's the only way to secure your claim to the throne and ensure the support of the conservative faction for this peace process." Nicholas felt his blood run cold. He turned away, his mind racing with the implications of what he just heard. As the days wore on, the pressure mounted from all sides. Dr. Lyra and Prince Tarak's cultural exchange program gained traction, offering a glimmer of hope amidst the rising tensions. Their proposal for a joint human-denobulan colony captured the imagination of moderates on both sides. However, not everyone was pleased with the progress toward peace. Nicholas and Sergeant Chen worked tirelessly to uncover evidence linking Marcus Blackwood and Zira Vex to the earlier terrorist plot. Their investigation led them through a labyrinth of shell companies and encrypted communications. Late one night, as they pored over financial records in a dimly lit office, Chen let out a triumphant cry. "Got it! Look at this transaction pattern. It's the same as the one we traced to the weapons smugglers." Nicholas leaned in, his eyes widening as he saw the connection. "This is it. We've got them." They presented their findings to Admiral Corzan, who nodded grimly. "Well done, both of you. I'll use every ounce of influence I have to get a joint task force approved. We need to shut these war profiteers down before they can do any more damage." As the summit neared its conclusion, Nicholas found himself in an unexpected position. He and Bryn were called upon to mediate a deadlock between human and denobulan representatives regarding disputed territories. The room was charged with tension as they entered. Sergeant Benson, Princess Bryn, the head of the human delegation, nodded. We hope your unique perspectives can help us find common ground. For hours they worked tirelessly, drawing on their understanding of both cultures to bridge the seemingly insurmountable divide. As the negotiations stretched into the night, Nicholas found himself standing close to Bryn, their hands almost touching as they leaned over a star chart. The air between them crackled with unspoken emotion. In a moment of weakness, their eyes met, and Nicholas saw his own longing reflected in Bryn's gaze. Before he could stop himself, he leaned in, their lips meeting in a brief but passionate embrace. The sound of a sharp intake of breath broke them apart. They turned to see Prince Tarek standing in the doorway, his expression a mix of shock and something unreadable. The prince's eyes darted between them, and for a moment Nicholas was certain their secret was about to become public knowledge. But Tarek surprised them both. His features softened and he spoke in a low voice. We will discuss this later. For now, we have work to do. As Tarek left, Nicholas and Bryn shared a look of relief tinged with apprehension. They knew that this moment of indiscretion could have far-reaching consequences, but for now, they had to focus on the task at hand. The next morning, as the delegates gathered for the final signing ceremony, Nicholas stood at his post, his mind racing with the events of the past weeks. He watched as human and denobulan leaders approached the table, ready to put pen to paper on a framework for lasting peace. As Bryn stepped forward to deliver her closing remarks, their eyes met across the room. In that moment, Nicholas knew that while one chapter was ending, another was just beginning. The road ahead would be fraught with challenges, both personal and political. But as he looked at Bryn, he felt a surge of hope. Whatever came next, they would face it together. As the delegates filed out of the signing ceremony, a palpable sense of relief and accomplishment filled the air. Nicholas watched as Bryn shook hands with the various dignitaries, her smile radiant and genuine. Their eyes met across the room, and for a moment the world around them faded away. The moment was short-lived, however, as Admiral Corzin approached Nicholas with purposeful strides. Sergeant Benson, a word. Nicholas nodded, following the Admiral to a quiet corner of the room. Corzin's expression was unreadable as he spoke in a low voice. The Joint Committee has made a decision. You and Princess Bryn are to lead the new human denobulan colony expedition. Nicholas blinked, taken aback by the unexpected news. Sir, I'm not sure I understand. Corzan's lips quirked in a rare smile. It's quite simple, Sergeant. Your unique experiences and the trust you've built with both sides make you ideal candidates. Of course, this assignment comes with a promotion. Congratulations, Lieutenant Benson. As the implications of this new role sank in, Nicholas felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. The opportunity to work closely with Bryn was thrilling, but he knew the challenges they would face would be immense. Over the next few weeks, preparations for the expedition moved at a breakneck pace. Nicholas found himself in endless meetings, coordinating logistics, and reviewing personnel files. It was during one such meeting that he first heard the name that would come to haunt him in the months ahead. Lord Kalen will be joining the denobulan contingent, Prince Tarek announced, his eyes flicking between Nicholas and Bryn. He's expressed a keen interest in the cultural exchange aspects of the colony. Nicholas noticed Bryn stiffen almost imperceptibly at the mention of Kalen's name. Later, as they walked together through the space station's arboretum, he broached the subject. This Lord Kalen? Nicholas began, trying to keep his tone casual. You know him. Bryn sighed, her fingers brushing against a delicate alien flower. He's been a persistent suitor for years, and Alara favors him as a potential match. Nicholas felt a knot form in his stomach, but before he could respond, his communicator chirped. Admiral Corzan's voice came through, requesting an immediate meeting. In the Admiral's office, Corzan's expression was grave. We have reason to believe that remnants of the War Profiteers network have infiltrated the colony project. I need you to investigate, discreetly. Nicholas nodded, his mind already racing with the implications. Understood, sir. I'll do my best to root them out. As the day of departure approached, the newly christened Starship Harmony hummed with activity. Nicholas stood on the bridge, surveying the controlled chaos around him. Bryn entered, her presence immediately drawing all eyes. "Status report, Lieutenant?" she asked, a hint of playfulness in her tone. Nicholas couldn't help but smile. "All systems go, Your Highness. We're ready to make history." As the Harmony broke free from the space station's gravity well, Nicholas felt a surge of optimism. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he was certain that together, he and Bryn could overcome them. Little did he know that their persistence would be tested sooner than expected. Just days into their journey, alarms blared across the ship. Nicholas raced to the bridge, finding Bryn already there, her face illuminated by the flashing red warning lights. "Navigation systems are malfunctioning," the helm officer reported, his fingers flying over the controls. "We're veering off course into an uncharted sector." Nicholas and Bryn shared a look of concern. As they worked to regain control of the ship, neither could shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of their trials. The Harmony emerged from its unplanned detour into a sea of glittering metal. Nicholas's breath caught in his throat as he took in the sight before them. A massive debris field stretched as far as the eye could see, the remnants of countless ancient spacecraft drifting silently in the void. "My God," Bryn whispered, her eyes wide with wonder. "What is this place?" As the crew scrambled to analyze the unexpected discovery, Nicholas couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. He watched as Lord Kalen strode onto the bridge, his eyes gleaming with barely concealed excitement. "This changes everything," Kalen declared, his gaze locked on Bryn. "These are clearly the remnants of a great Denobulan empire. We must claim this territory at once." Nicholas felt his jaw clench. "We don't know that for certain, Lord Kalen. This could be the legacy of any number of civilizations, including human ones." As tensions began to rise on the bridge, Nicholas caught Bryn's eye. They both knew that how they handled this situation would set the tone for the entire colony project. With a subtle nod, they moved to address the crew together, presenting a united front in the face of this unexpected challenge. The coming days would test their leadership, their diplomacy, and their growing feelings for each other. As Nicholas gazed out at the ancient debris field, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were standing on the precipice of something much larger than they had ever imagined. As the Harmony continued its journey towards the planet that would become their new home, Nicholas couldn't shake the feeling that their discovery of the ancient debris field was just the beginning of a much larger mystery. Weeks passed, and the anticipation among the crew grew as they neared their destination. However, the excitement was tempered by an increasing sense of urgency. Dr. Lyra burst into the command center, her face etched with concern. "Lieutenant Benson, Princess Bryn, we have a problem," she said, her voice tight. "Our long-range scanners have detected a massive radiation wave heading towards the planet. If we don't find a way to protect the colony, it could be devastating." Nicholas and Bryn exchanged worried glances. "How long do we have?" Nicholas asked. "Based on our current calculations, we have approximately 3 weeks before the wave reaches Harmony," Dr. Lyra replied. Bryn's eyes narrowed in drive. "We need to accelerate our efforts on the shield technology we discovered in the artifact cache. It's our best chance at protecting the colony." Nicholas nodded in agreement. "Let's assemble a team of our best human and Denobulan scientists. We'll work around the clock if we have to." As they threw themselves into the work, the challenges mounted. The planet's atmosphere proved more volatile than their initial scans had indicated, with frequent ionic storms that threatened to disrupt their carefully laid plans. During a particularly intense brainstorming session, Nicholas had an epiphany. "What if we create a network of satellites?" he proposed, sketching out his idea on a nearby display. "We could use them to generate a web-like shield structure around the planet, providing more comprehensive coverage." Dr. Lyra's eyes lit up. "That could work, but the deployment would be incredibly risky, especially given the atmospheric conditions." As they worked to refine the plan, tensions among the colonists began to simmer. Nicholas overheard whispered conversations in the corridors, voices filled with suspicion and fear. "I'm telling you, the Denobulans are planning something," a human colonist hissed to his companion. "Once that shield is up, what's to stop them from taking control?" Nicholas frowned, recognizing the dangerous undercurrent of mistrust. He pulled Bryn aside after their next meeting. We need to address these rumors head on, he said. If we don't, they could tear the colony apart before we even land. Bryn nodded, her expression grave. You're right. We need to lead by example. I'll command the Denobulan deployment squad for the SHIELD satellites. You take charge of the human engineering team. If they see us working together, it might help ease some of the tension. As they prepared for their approach to Harmony, Nicholas couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and trepidation. The planet loomed large in the view screen, its swirling atmosphere a riot of blues and greens. Beginning our descent, the helm officer announced, preparing for atmospheric entry. Nicholas gripped the edge of his console, his heart racing as the ship began to shudder. The Harmony plunged through layers of roiling clouds, buffeted by strong winds and electrical discharges. Ionic storm activity increasing, Sergeant Chen reported from her station. Shield integrity holding at 87%. As they broke through the cloud cover, the true beauty of Harmony revealed itself. Vast continents of lush greenery stretched out below them, interspersed with shimmering oceans and towering mountain ranges. It's breathtaking, Bryn whispered, standing close to Nicholas. Their moment of awe was short-lived, however, as alarms began to blare across the bridge. Multiple shield generators offline, Chen shouted. We're losing coverage in sectors 3 and 7. Nicholas sprang into action. Reroute power from non-essential systems. We need to stabilize the shield network before we can begin landing operations. As they worked feverishly to address the crisis, Nicholas couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the first of many challenges they would face on their new home. The radiation wave was still approaching, and the clock was ticking. With perseverance in his eyes, he turned to Bryn. Let's show them what humans and Denobulans can accomplish when we work together. Together when we work. He turned to face the bridge crew, his voice steady and confident. All right, people, let's stabilize this shield network and get our colony established. We didn't come this far to fail now. Over the next few weeks, the colonists worked tirelessly to establish their foothold on Harmony. The shield network, while functional, required constant maintenance and adjustment to withstand the planet's volatile atmosphere. Nicholas and Bryn found themselves at the center of every crisis, their leadership tested time and again as they navigated the challenges of their new home. As the immediate danger passed and the colony began to take shape, new tensions arose. The discovery of an ancient weapons cache during the initial surveys had sparked heated debates among both humans and Denobulans. Nicholas watched with growing concern as factions began to form, each with their own ideas about how to handle this potentially game-changing discovery. One evening, as he pored over reports in his quarters, Nicholas came to a decision. He requested an urgent meeting with Bryn and the newly formed Colonial Council. As they gathered in the makeshift meeting room, Nicholas laid out his proposal. We need to neutralize the weapons, he said, his gaze sweeping across the assembled faces. I propose we launch them into Harmony's sun. A murmur rippled through the room. Lord Kalen's voice rose above the others, sharp with disapproval. Destroy our only means of defense? That's madness. Nicholas held up a hand. Hear me out. These weapons are a source of conflict among us. Their very existence threatens the peace we've worked so hard to establish. By destroying them, we make a statement about our commitment to cooperation and mutual trust. Bryn nodded slowly, her eyes meeting Nicholas's. It's a bold move, but I agree. We came here to build something new, not to cling to the remnants of old conflicts. The debate raged for hours, but in the end, Nicholas's proposal gained support from both human and Denobulan moderates. As the council adjourned, Admiral Corzan pulled Nicholas aside. Well done, Lieutenant, he said, his voice low. But don't think this solves everything. We've received word from Command about the formation of a joint human-Denobulan council. You and Princess Bryn are to be key members. Nicholas nodded, already anticipating the challenges ahead. What's our first task? Overseeing the exploration of the ancient ruins we've detected on the planet's surface, Corzan replied. There's a lot we still don't know about Harmony's history. The excavation team set to work immediately, carefully unearthing structures that had lain hidden for millennia. Nicholas found himself fascinated by each new discovery, often joining the scientists in their explorations when his other duties allowed. It was during one such expedition that everything changed. Nicholas, Bryn, and a team of researchers were examining a newly uncovered chamber when the ground beneath them shuddered. Before they could react, the tunnel behind them collapsed in a thunderous avalanche of rock and dust. Coughing and disoriented, Nicholas struggled to his feet. "Is everyone all right?" he called out, squinting through the settling dust. Bryn's voice came from nearby, tinged with pain but steady. "I'm okay. A few cuts and bruises, but nothing serious." As they took stock of their situation, the gravity of their predicament became clear. They were trapped, cut off from communication with the surface and with limited supplies. Nicholas met Bryn's gaze, seeing his own grit reflected in her eyes. "We'll find a way out," he said, his voice low and intense. "Together." As they began to explore their surroundings, searching for an alternate escape route, Nicholas couldn't help but feel a mix of fear and exhilaration. The danger of their situation was undeniable, but being here with Bryn, facing this challenge side by side, it felt right in a way he couldn't quite explain. Their path led them deeper into the underground complex, through winding corridors and vast, echoing chambers. Each step seemed to take them further from the world they knew, and deeper into the mysteries of Harmony's past. In a moment of rest, as they shared a meager ration of water, Bryn turned to Nicholas. "I never thought I'd say this," she said with a wry smile, "but I'm glad you're here with me, Nicholas." He returned her smile, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the stuffy air of the underground. "There's no one I'd rather be trapped with, Your Highness." Their moment was interrupted by a sudden flicker of light. Both of them tensed, ready for danger, but what materialized before them was beyond anything they could have imagined. A holographic display sprang to life, filling the chamber with ghostly images of a civilization long past. As they watched in awe, the hologram began to tell a story, the final days of the beings who had once called Harmony home. The images showed a thriving world, advanced technology, and a people not so different from humans or denobulans. But then came the revelation that shook them to their core. The radiation waves that threatened their colony were not a natural phenomenon. They were the result of an ancient weapon system, designed to cleanse the entire sector of life. The implications were staggering. "We have to get this information back to the colony," Bryn said, her voice urgent. "This changes everything." Nicholas nodded, his mind racing with the possibilities and dangers this knowledge presented. "You're right, but first, we need to find a way out of here." As if in response to their words, the chamber around them suddenly came to life. Lights flickered on, revealing intricate patterns etched into the walls. A mechanical voice echoed through the space, speaking in a language neither of them recognized. "I think," Nicholas said slowly, "we just activated some kind of security system." Bryn's eyes widened as panels in the floor began to shift and move. "Or a test. Look, it's presenting us with challenges." Indeed, before them lay a series of obstacles, each more complex than the last. As they worked together to overcome them, Nicholas realized that each challenge seemed designed to require the unique abilities of different species working in tandem. "This is incredible," he breathed as they successfully navigated a particularly tricky sequence. "It's like it was built to prove the value of cooperation between different races." Bryn nodded, her eyes shining with excitement despite their dire situation. "And we're proving it right. Human ingenuity and denobulan intuition. We make a pretty good team, Nicholas." As they pressed on, each challenge bringing them closer to what they hoped was an exit, Nicholas couldn't help but feel that they were on the verge of something monumental. The secrets they had uncovered, the bond that had grown between them, it all seemed to be leading to a future filled with both danger and incredible possibility. With renewed drive, they faced the next obstacle, ready to prove once again that together they could overcome anything Harmony threw their way. Way out. As they pressed on through the ancient complex, the air grew thinner and the passageways narrower. Nicholas and Bryn's steps echoed off the metallic walls, their breath coming in short gasps as they navigated the increasingly treacherous terrain. Suddenly, a tremor shook the ground beneath their feet. Dust and small debris rained down from the ceiling as the tremor intensified into a full-blown quake. "We need to move," Nicholas shouted, grabbing Bryn's hand and pulling her along as they sprinted through the collapsing corridor. They burst into a vast chamber just as the passage behind them caved in. Panting heavily, they took in their new surroundings. The chamber was unlike anything they had seen before, filled with sleek, pulsing technology that hummed with energy. "Nicholas, look," Bryn whispered, pointing to a shimmering holographic display at the center of the room. As they approached, the display sprang to life, revealing a three-dimensional map of the surrounding star system. At its center, nestled within a dense asteroid field, was a massive structure unlike anything they had ever seen. It's incredible," Nicholas breathed, his eyes wide with wonder. Dr. Lyra's voice crackled through their comms, startling them both. "Lieutenant, Princess, can you hear me?" "Loud and clear, Doctor," Nicholas responded, relief evident in his voice. "We've discovered something extraordinary." As Nicholas relayed their findings to Dr. Lyra, Bryn studied the holographic map intently. "This station," she said, her voice filled with awe, "it's the source of the radiation waves." Their conversation was cut short by another violent tremor. Warning lights flashed across the chamber as an automated voice announced in an unknown language. "We need to get out of here," Nicholas said urgently. "This whole complex is becoming unstable." As if in response to his words, a section of the wall slid open, revealing a sleek, alien craft. Without hesitation, Nicholas and Bryn climbed aboard. The craft hummed to life at their touch, its controls responding to their thoughts as much as their physical inputs. They shot out of the underground complex moments before it collapsed entirely, emerging into Harmony's turbulent atmosphere. As they streaked across the sky, Nicholas relayed their coordinates to the colony. "Admiral Corzin, we're en route to an uncharted region of space," he reported. "We've discovered the source of the radiation waves. It's a massive space station hidden within an asteroid field." "Understood, Lieutenant," Corzan's voice came through, tinged with static. "We're tracking your position. Be cautious. That region is highly unstable." As they approached the coordinates, the asteroid field loomed before them, a chaotic maze of spinning rocks and debris. Nicholas gripped the controls tightly, his enhanced reflexes from the shield technology allowing him to navigate the treacherous field with uncanny precision. Bryn's eyes were fixed on the sensor readings. "There," she said, pointing to a gap in the asteroids. "I can see it." As they emerged from the field, the sight before them took their breath away. The space station was an enormous structure, its design a breathtaking fusion of human and denobulan aesthetics. Sleek lines and organic curves blended seamlessly, creating a form that was both alien and strangely familiar. "It's beautiful," Bryn whispered, her voice filled with wonder. As they approached the station, a docking bay opened up to receive them. Their small craft glided into the cavernous space, setting down gently on the ancient deck. Nicholas and Bryn exchanged a look of drive as they prepared to disembark. Whatever secrets this station held, they would face them together. As the ship's hatch opened, they stepped out into the unknown, ready to unravel the mystery that had brought them to this moment. The air inside the station was stale but breathable. Their footsteps echoed through empty corridors as they made their way deeper into the structure, following the pulsing energy readings on their scanners. "This technology," Nicholas mused, running his hand along a smooth, glowing panel. "It's like nothing I've ever seen before." Bryn nodded in agreement. "And yet, there's something familiar about it, almost as if—" Her words trailed off as they entered what appeared to be the station's control center. Holographic displays sprang to life around them, filling the air with streams of data and pulsing energy readouts. Dr. Lyra's voice came through there, comms, excitement evident in her tone. "I'm receiving the data stream now. This is incredible. The station's purpose, it's not what we thought at all." As Nicholas and Bryn worked to decipher the ancient systems, the true nature of the station began to reveal itself. It wasn't a weapon of destruction, but a tool of preservation, a galactic reset mechanism designed to protect and nurture life throughout the sector. But something had gone wrong. The station's AI had malfunctioned, causing it to activate prematurely and continuously, threatening the very life it was meant to protect. As they delved deeper into the station's systems, a sense of urgency grew. They needed to shut down the malfunctioning AI before it could trigger another radiation wave, one that could potentially penetrate even Harmony's shield. Nicholas turned to Bryn, his expression grave. We need to access the core. It's the only way to stop this. Bryn nodded, her eyes meeting his with unwavering tenacity. Then let's do it. Together. As they made their way towards the heart of the station, neither of them could shake the feeling that they were on the verge of something monumental. A moment that would not only determine the fate of their colony, but perhaps the entire sector. With each step, they moved closer to a destiny that would test the limits of their courage, their ingenuity, and the bond they had forged in the face of adversity.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.